Psycho, 1960. The movie starts with a woman named Marion Crane. She works as a secretary in a sunny city called Phoenix. Marion is in love with a man named Sam, but they can't get married because Sam owes a lot of money. One day, Marion is given a big stack of cash, $40,000, to put in the bank for her boss. Instead of putting it in the bank, Marion gets a bad idea. She decides to take the money and run away so she can solve all of her problems and marry Sam. Marion is very nervous on the road. A policeman sees her and looks at her strangely. This makes her even more worried. She knows she did something wrong. To hide, she trades her car for a different one. That night it starts raining hard and Marion gets very tired. She stops at a quiet place called the Bates Motel. Marion meets the motel owner, a shy, nice-looking young man named Norman Bates. He is very nervous and likes to stuff dead birds, taxidermy as a hobby. Norman lives with his mother in a big old house on a hill behind the motel. Marion hears them yelling. Mother is mean and screams that Norman shouldn't be friends with a strange girl like Marion. Marion feels bad for Norman because he seems so lonely and trapped by his mean mother. Norman tells Marion that everyone gets trapped sometimes. Thinking about Norman makes Marion realize that stealing was a terrible mistake. She decides that the next morning she will drive back to Phoenix and give the money back, even if it means getting in trouble. Marion goes to take a shower. She is feeling peaceful because she finally decided to do the right thing. Suddenly, a shadowy figure bursts into the bathroom and attacks Marion with a knife. Marion is killed in the shower. This is the biggest shock in the whole movie because Marion was the main character and she died so early. Norman runs in and sees what Mother has done. He is scared, but he decides he has to protect Mother. He cleans up all the blood, wraps up Marion's body, and puts it in the trunk of her car. He also puts all of her things in the car and accidentally puts the $40,000 in there too, without knowing it was there. Norman drives the car to a swamp behind the motel and pushes it in. The car, the body, and the money all sink and disappear under the mud. A week later, Marion's sister Lila and her boyfriend Sam start looking for her. They are joined by a detective named Arbogast who is hired to find the missing money. Arbogast is a smart, tough investigator. He finds the Bates Motel and talks to Norman. Norman lies and acts very nervous. Arbogast knows Norman is hiding something. He even sees an old woman in the house's window. Norman tells him that is his mother. Arbogast calls Lila and Sam and says he is going to go back and try to talk to Mrs. Bates. He goes into the big house on the hill. As he walks up the stairs, the shadowy figure of the mother comes out and stabs and kills the detective. Norman then sinks the detective's car in the swamp too. Lila and Sam go to the sheriff, who tells them a strange thing. Norman's mother actually died 10 years ago. She poisoned her boyfriend and herself. The sheriff thinks Arbogast lied, but Lila and Sam still don't trust Norman. Lila and Sam go to the motel to look around themselves. Sam keeps Norman busy in the office while Lila sneaks up to the scary house. Lila goes down into a dark room called the fruit cellar. She sees an old woman sitting in a chair. She turns the chair around and screams. It is not a live woman, but the dead, dried-up body of Mrs. Bates. Suddenly, Norman runs into the room wearing a wig and his mother's dress, holding a knife. He is the killer. Sam rushes in and stops Norman just in time. At the police station, a doctor explains everything. Norman was so sad and guilty after he killed his mother and her boyfriend 10 years ago that he pretended she was still alive. He dug up her body and kept it in the house. Norman created a mean personality inside his own head called Mother. Whenever Norman liked a woman, Mother would get angry and jealous, take over Norman's body, put on the dress, and use the knife to kill the woman. Norman didn't know he was doing the killing. The mother part of his mind did it. The movie ends with Norman sitting in his jail cell. The doctor says that the mother personality has completely taken over and Norman is gone forever. Norman just sits there, thinking like the evil mother. The Exorcist, 1970. The movie starts far away, in a hot, dusty place called northern Iraq. An old, kind-looking priest named Father Lancaster Marin is working at a historical dig site where people are digging up very old things. He finds a small, frightening stone statue of a winged demon. Father Marin has seen things like this before, and he knows this statue means something very bad is coming. He looks at a bigger statue of the same demon called Pazuzu, and seems ready for a fight. Meanwhile, in a nice, quiet neighborhood called Georgetown in Washington, D.C., we meet a famous movie actress named Chris MacNeil. She is renting a big, beautiful house with her 12-year-old daughter, Regan. Regan is a sweet girl who is close to her mother. Regan begins to talk about an imaginary friend she calls Captain Howdy. Soon, strange things start happening in the house. Chris hears weird noises coming from the attic, and Regan's bed starts shaking violently at night. At a party one night, Regan suddenly comes downstairs. She is acting strangely and urinates on the carpet in front of the guests. Regan's behavior gets much worse. She becomes very angry, talks in a strange, deep, rough voice, and starts using terrible words that no little girl should know. She begins to hurt herself, and she shows a scary, unnatural strength, even throwing her doctors across the room. Chris is scared and desperate. She takes Regan to many different doctors and medical specialists. They run many painful tests like X-rays and spine taps, but the doctors can find nothing wrong with Regan's body or mind. They are all completely confused. One evening, Chris returns home to find her friend, a movie director named Burke Dennings, lying dead at the bottom of the long stone steps outside the house right below Regan's window. His head is turned around in a gruesome way. A detective named Lieutenant Kinderman begins to investigate the murder. Regan's condition turns horrifying. Her face becomes scarred, she says, and does extremely vulgar things with a crucifix, and her whole head spins all the way around. Chris is forced to strap her own daughter to the bed to keep her from hurting herself and others. Finally, the frustrated doctors tell Chris there is nothing more they can do and suggest as a last resort that she might need to seek a priest to ask about an exorcism. Chris goes to see Father Damien Karras. Father Karras is a priest who is also a psychiatrist, a mind doctor. He is struggling with his faith in God because he feels guilty and sad about the recent death of his elderly mother. He is also having doubts about whether things like demons and possession are even real. Father Karras visits Regan. The thing inside Regan knows all about Father Karras's personal problems and immediately starts mocking his guilt and his lost faith. Regan, speaking in the low, rough voice, claims to be the devil. She insults him, speaks strange languages, and even vomits green bile onto Father Karras's face. Father Karras is a man of science, so he tries to trick the demon. He uses regular tap water and pretends it is holy water. The demon reacts violently, which makes Karras think it might just be a trick or a mental illness. But then, while Karras is out of the room, words magically appear carved onto Regan's stomach that read, "Help me." This is the proof Father Karras needs. He realizes this is real demonic possession, not just an illness. He tells the church they must perform an exorcism to save the innocent girl. The church agrees, but only if an experienced priest leads the ritual. They send for the very man we saw in Iraq, Father Lancaster Marin, who has fought this demon before. Father Marin arrives at the house looking old and frail but determined. He warns Father Karras that the demon will use every psychological trick it can think of to attack them, and he tells Karras not to listen to its lies. The two priests enter Regan's cold bedroom and begin the exorcism. They read the prayers from a special book, and the demon inside Regan curses and insults them, making the bed shake and the room feel like a battleground. The demon focuses its attack on Father Karras. It uses the voice of Karras's dead mother to tear at his guilt. Karras becomes so emotionally distraught that Father Marin has to send him out of the room, warning him to rest and regain his strength. Father Karras pulls himself together and promises Chris that Regan will not die. He goes back into the room and finds Father Marin lying dead on the floor. The stress and fighting have caused the elderly priest to have a heart attack. Karras is overcome with rage and grief. He attacks the possessed Regan, yelling at her and beating her violently. In a moment of desperation, Karras makes a huge sacrifice. He demands that the demon leave the innocent girl and enter him instead. The demon accepts the offer, and we see the evil power leave Regan and surge into Father Karras. His eyes flash yellow with the demon's presence. In a final, desperate act of will, Karras fights the demon inside his own body. He is able to move and with his last strength throws himself out of the second-story window. He falls down the long stone steps and dies, taking the demon with him. Regan is suddenly free. Chris rushes in and holds her healed daughter. A moment later, a friend of Karras, Father Dyer, finds the dying Karras on the steps and gives him the last rites, a special prayer to save his soul. The movie ends a few days later. Regan has no memory of anything that happened. She and her mother are leaving town to start over. As they drive away, Regan sees Father Dyer and, not knowing why, gives him a soft kiss on the cheek, showing that the good part of her is back and safe. Night of the Living Dead, 1968. The story begins in a quiet rural cemetery in Pennsylvania. A brother and sister, Johnny and Barbara, are visiting their father's grave. Johnny teases Barbara, saying, "They're coming to get you, Barbara," when he spots a strange, pale, stumbling man walking nearby. The man is not a joke. He is a reanimated corpse, a ghoul, what we now call a zombie, with a hunger for living human flesh. He attacks, and in the struggle, Johnny is killed. Barbara escapes and runs in a panic until she reaches a lonely, empty farmhouse. Inside, she finds a gruesome sight, a partially eaten body. She is so terrified that she becomes completely silent and almost catatonic with shock. Just as the ghouls start to gather around the house, a strong, quick-thinking man named Ben arrives in a truck. He drags Barbara inside and immediately starts to barricade the windows and doors with whatever wood and tools he can find, desperately fighting off the first wave of the slow, shuffling undead. While Ben is securing the house, he discovers that they are not alone. 5 other people have been hiding in the cellar basement. They are Harry Cooper, his wife Helen, and their little daughter Karen, who is sick and has a nasty wound on her arm. Also with them are a young couple, Tom and Judy. The group is divided right away. Ben is the clear leader, wanting to stay upstairs where they can barricade the main entry points, keep watch, and listen to the radio and television for news. Harry Cooper, however, is stubborn and argues fiercely that they must all stay sealed safely inside the cellar, which he believes is the only truly safe space, even though it has no other exit. Their arguing and mistrust of each other becomes a threat as dangerous as the monsters outside. The news reports on TV are chilling. They confirm that the recently dead are coming back to life all across the East Coast, driven only by the need to eat human flesh. The reports also explain how to kill them. You must shoot them in the head or burn them. They suggest that the whole nightmare may be caused by radiation from a space probe returning from Venus. The news mentions that there are rescue centers and shelters being set up. Ben develops a plan to escape. He needs to get to his truck outside and refuel it at a nearby pump so they can drive to safety. Ben, Tom, and Judy agree to go out to the pump. Ben uses a torch and some fire to keep the ghouls back while Tom tries to fill the truck with gas. In the chaos, the gas spills and the truck accidentally catches fire. Ben tries to help, but the truck suddenly explodes, killing Tom and Judy instantly. Ben makes it back to the farmhouse, but in a moment of selfish panic, Harry Cooper has locked him out, thinking only of saving himself and his family in the cellar. Ben is furious. He smashes down the door to get back in. The explosion and the noise have drawn a massive horde of ghouls to the farmhouse. They break through the barricades. Inside, the group descends into chaos. Harry and Ben fight, and Harry grabs the only rifle. Ben quickly gets the gun back and shoots Harry in the stomach. Harry stumbles down to the cellar to be with his injured daughter. At the same time, the sickly little girl Karen has died from her ghoul bite. She reanimates as one of the undead. When Harry crawls into the cellar, she is there waiting. The ghoul child immediately begins eating her own father's remains. Helen Cooper goes down to the cellar, sees the sickening sight, and is killed by her own ghoul daughter, who stabs her repeatedly with a masonry trowel. Upstairs, the ghouls burst through the doors. Barbara, who has finally come out of her shock, sees her ghoul brother Johnny among the attackers. He grabs her and pulls her out into the crowd, and she is killed. Ben is the only one left. He fights his way to the cellar and is forced to shoot the reanimated corpses of both Harry and Helen to survive. He barricades himself inside the cellar, the one place he said was a death trap, and waits for the night to end, listening to the pounding of the ghouls overhead. When morning finally arrives, the ghoul attacks slow down. Ben hears the sounds of gunfire and sirens outside. A large group of armed men, a posse, has arrived, moving through the countryside to systematically kill the remaining ghouls. Relieved, Ben cautiously emerges from the dark cellar. As he steps out and looks toward the living men, they immediately mistake him for one of the ghouls. Without hesitation, they shoot him in the head. The movie ends with stark black and white documentary-style photographs. They show the posse dragging Ben's body out of the house and casually tossing him onto a bonfire to be burned alongside the very ghouls he fought all night to survive. The hero is killed by the people who were supposed to save him. Halloween, 1978. The film begins on a crisp, quiet Halloween night in Haddonfield, Illinois in 1963. The opening scene is shot entirely from a first-person perspective, the killer's point of view POV, making the audience an unwilling participant. We see a boy, Michael Myers, standing outside his own house looking up at a second-story window. His 17-year-old sister, Judith Myers, and her boyfriend are inside having a private moment. The boyfriend leaves the house. The POV moves to the back door where a set of keys are retrieved from underneath the doormat. The killer enters the house, grabs a butcher knife from the kitchen, and slips on a clown mask. The POV moves upstairs to Judith's bedroom. The killer raises the knife and brutally stabs Judith Myers multiple times as she screams. The murder is sudden and horrifying. The killer walks downstairs and out the front door just as the parents return home. Michael's mother tearfully pulls the mask off the killer, revealing 6-year-old Michael Myers standing motionless in a clown costume holding the bloody knife. He is taken away to Smith's Grove Sanitarium. 15 years later, it is October 30th, 1978. Michael Myers is now 21 and a patient at Smith's Grove. His psychiatrist, Dr. Sam Loomis, is transporting Michael to a court hearing with nurse Marion Chambers. Loomis recounts his years of failure to treat Michael, stating that he sees only a blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. It's a dark, stormy night. As Loomis exits the car to open the institution gate, Michael Myers escapes. He breaks the car window, chokes Marion Chambers, and steals the car, vanishing into the stormy night. Loomis is left horrified on the road, knowing his patient, whom he refers to only as the Shape and Evil, is now loose. The next day, Halloween in Haddonfield, high school student Laurie Strode walks to school with her friends, the feistier Annie Brackett and the boy-crazy Linda van der Klock. They chat about their babysitting jobs that night and their plans or lack thereof with boys. Laurie drops off a key at the abandoned Myers house, which her realtor father is attempting to sell. Michael, having already driven back to Haddonfield, has been lurking in the house, where he also finds and steals his sister's tombstone from the nearby cemetery. Michael begins stalking Laurie throughout the day. He appears in a stolen mechanic's outfit and his now iconic white mask. He watches her from behind bushes, from across the street outside her classroom window, and from behind a fluttering clothesline in her yard. The film emphasizes that Laurie is the only one who sees him, though she is unsure what she's seeing. Dr. Loomis arrives in Haddonfield and starts his frantic search. He finds Michael's stolen car, now abandoned, and goes to the local cemetery, where he sees Michael standing over Judith Myers' recovered tombstone. Michael slowly walks away and vanishes before Loomis can reach him. Loomis meets with Sheriff Lee Brackett, Annie's father, who dismisses the doctor's warnings as the ravings of a crazed man. As night falls, Laurie begins her babysitting job watching Tommy Doyle at the Doyle house. Across the street, Annie is babysitting Lindsay Wallace at the Wallace house. The kids tell stories about the boogeyman. Michael makes his presence known slowly. He kills the Wallace family dog and leaves its body for a moment of quiet dread. He then tries to get into the Doyle house, prompting Tommy to exclaim, "The boogeyman is outside!" Laurie dismisses it as a child's imagination. Annie, needing to pick up her boyfriend Paul, takes Lindsay across the street to the Doyle house, leaving Laurie to watch both children. As Annie sits in her car, distracted by trying to roll her window down, Michael Myers is revealed to be hiding in the back seat. He attacks her, strangling her and then slitting her throat before leaving her body in the car's garage, hidden from the street. Later, Linda and her boyfriend Bob Sims arrive at the Wallace house for a rendezvous. After they go upstairs, Bob goes down to the kitchen for beer. Michael appears from the shadows and with supernatural strength stabs Bob with the knife, pinning his body to the wall of the pantry. Linda calls Laurie from the upstairs phone, complaining about Annie being late. Michael quickly drapes a white bedsheet over himself, puts on Bob's glasses over the eye holes, and walks into the room posing as a costumed Bob. Linda, annoyed, continues talking to Laurie, telling her she can barely hear Bob breathing. Michael, still silent, then strangles Linda with the phone cord as Laurie listens to the fading gasps on the other end, still convinced it's a prank call, yelling, "Are you fooling me? I'll kill you if this is a joke." Now deeply unsettled by the phone call, Laurie walks across the dark street to the Wallace house to investigate. She sees Annie's car in the garage and finds her body. Inside the Wallace house, she discovers the bodies of Bob pinned to the wall, and Linda, and then sees Judith Myers' tombstone laid out in the bedroom. Michael, who has been hiding, suddenly appears in the doorway. He slashes Laurie's arm, sending her tumbling down the stairs. Terrified, Laurie scrambles out of the Wallace house and back to the Doyle house, screaming for help in the street but getting no response. She collapses on the porch, barely making it inside before Michael, walking with his signature slow, relentless pace, catches up. Inside, she struggles to find a working phone and yells at the two children, Tommy and Lindsay, to hide in the bathroom. Michael smashes his way through the glass door and the final confrontation begins. Laurie repeatedly defends herself and fights back. She stabs him in the neck with a knitting needle. Michael simply pulls it out. She hits him with a metal coat hanger, which he ignores. She ultimately grabs Michael's own butcher knife and stabs him in the chest and then in the eye. Michael collapses again, lying still. Laurie, thinking he is finally dead, rushes upstairs to check on the children who have fled to the neighbor's house. She is sitting quietly, catching her breath, when Michael's figure, with a newly blinded eye, slowly rises up behind her. As Michael begins to choke Laurie, Dr. Loomis, having followed the two fleeing children, arrives on the scene. Loomis sees Michael strangling Laurie in the upstairs window. He raises his revolver and shoots Michael Myers 6 times in the chest, sending his body flying backward over the balcony. Loomis looks down at Michael's body on the lawn. He turns to Laurie, who asks, terrified, "Was that the boogeyman?" Loomis simply says, "As a matter of fact, it was." Loomis looks back down at the empty lawn where the body should be. Michael Myers is gone. The film ends with Loomis staring into the night, realizing the evil has not been contained, as a chilling montage of all the places Michael was seen lurking throughout the day plays, accompanied by his heavy, unmistakable breathing. The shape is loose again and the nightmare continues. The Shining, 1980. The film opens with a vast, sweeping view of the Rocky Mountains as a small yellow car navigates the perilous winding roads. This car carries Jack Torrance, a writer with a troubled past that includes recovering from alcoholism and a temper that led to him injuring his son. Jack is interviewing for the job of winter caretaker at the remote Overlook Hotel. The hotel is a massive, opulent structure built on grounds that may be on an ancient burial site, and it will soon be completely snowbound for months. Manager Ullman, polite but uneasy, lays out the requirements. Total isolation and maintenance of the vast historic building. He tells Jack about the previous caretaker, Charles Grady, who in 1970 went completely insane from cabin fever and used an axe to brutally murder his wife and 2 young daughters before killing himself. Jack dismisses the story as a macabre novelty, assuring Ullman that the solitude is exactly what he needs to focus on writing his new play. The Torrance family consists of Jack, his timid wife Wendy, and their quiet, perceptive son Danny. Danny possesses a powerful psychic ability called the Shining. Before leaving Boulder, Danny has a traumatic episode, a vision of the hotel's dark future during a doctor's visit where Wendy vaguely references a past incident where a drunken Jack accidentally dislocated Danny's arm. At the hotel on closing day, the family meets the head chef, Dick Halloran. Halloran recognizes Danny's power, immediately forming a bond with him. He explains that the hotel is saturated with the unpleasant residues of bad events and warns the boy to steer clear of the empty room 237. Halloran gives Danny a crucial piece of instruction. If he is ever in real trouble, he can call Halloran telepathically, no matter the distance. Halloran then leaves for his winter home in Florida. The family settles in for the long, snowbound winter. Days turn into weeks. Jack quickly hits a wall with his writing, spending his days restlessly pacing the grand halls and his evenings staring blankly at his typewriter in the Colorado lounge. He grows a scraggly beard and becomes increasingly hostile, complaining to Wendy that he can't get any work done because she and Danny are too loud. Danny, meanwhile, explores the echoing vast interiors on his big-wheel tricycle. He rolls past the long, distinctive carpet patterns, his imagination and his shining gift constantly battling the hotel's dark energies. He is confronted by clear, terrifying visions. First, the ghostly Grady twins standing in a hallway, asking him to play with them forever. Later, he witnesses the horrifying, silent, slow-motion vision of an elevator door opening to unleash a gigantic red wave of blood that floods the corridor. The hotel begins its full assault on Jack's mind, preying on his resentment, ambition, and history of alcoholism. Danny is lured to the door of room 237. He enters and is immediately set upon by the decayed, hideous spirit of a former guest in the bathroom. He emerges with bruises on his neck and in a catatonic state of shock. When Wendy sees the marks, her suppressed fear and distrust of Jack boil over, and she directly accuses him of hurting the boy, a deep, cutting blow that further severs Jack's connection to reality. Stung by the accusation, Jack storms into the Gold Room ballroom and is amazed to find the bar fully stocked and warmly lit, as if a party is in full swing. The ghostly bartender Lloyd serves him a bourbon, assuring him the drinks are on the house, and lending a sympathetic ear to Jack's rants against his overbearing wife and family. Jack is completely seduced by the hotel's offer of escape from his responsibilities. Later in the men's room, Jack encounters the phantom waiter Delbert Grady, the man who claims to have murdered his family. Grady manipulates Jack, persuading him that his wife and son are getting in the way of his contractual obligations to the hotel. Grady suggests Jack must correct them, subtly planting the idea of a second massacre. Wendy's suspicion becomes panic when she finds Jack's typewriter. His manuscript is not a play, but a stack of pages covered only with the monotonous repeating sentence, "All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy." When she confronts him with the baseball bat, Jack gives in to the hotel's madness, threatening her with a terrifying snarl. Wendy is able to strike him and lock him inside the walk-in pantry. Danny, trapped in the caretaker's suite, enters a trance-like state. He begins chanting the word redrum and scrawls the phrase on the bathroom door with lipstick. Wendy looks into the mirror and finally sees the reversed word, murder. Meanwhile, the ghost of Grady speaks to Jack through the pantry door, promising to free him if Jack agrees to deal with the wife and the boy. Grady opens the lock and Jack retrieves a large fire axe. At that exact moment, Halloran receives the desperate psychic distress call from Danny. He cancels his plans and rushes back to Colorado, managing to charter a small plane and then borrowing a powerful snowcat vehicle for the final dangerous climb up the mountain. Jack finds Wendy and Danny in the suite. He violently smashes the axe through the wooden door, yelling the iconic line. Wendy shoves Danny out a small bathroom window into the snow. She cannot fit through the opening herself. Jack breaks through the door, but Wendy manages to slash his hand with a razor, driving him back for a brief moment. Halloran arrives at the hotel. He enters the silent, massive lobby and calls out for Danny. Jack ambushes him from a corner, swinging the axe in a final vicious arc and killing the chef instantly. Jack then spots Danny fleeing and begins the chase. Danny runs outside into the giant snow-covered hedge maze, a literal labyrinth of confusion. Using a trick of misdirection learned from Halloran, Danny carefully backtracks in his own footprints, jumping into the snow just off the path. Jack follows the visible tracks, believing Danny is ahead until he finds himself hopelessly lost among the towering hedges, calling out for his son. Exhausted and defeated by the cold, Jack collapses into the snow and freezes solid. Danny and Wendy escape the maze, find Halloran's snowcat, and drive away from the overlook, leaving the hotel and Jack's frozen body behind. The final scene is a long, slow zoom into a framed photograph hanging in the hotel's hallway. The July 4th ball, 1921. In the very center of the large group of partygoers stands a smiling Jack Torrance, a suggestion that he has not only been absorbed into the hotel's history, but has perhaps always been a part of the Overlook's cyclical madness.